Shukran, Fares. Hello, everybody, ladies, gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, dear pastor, and especially new friends. Yes, my name is Alessio. I come from Torino, Italy, where I work for a foundation, the Santagata Foundation, which is a no-profit organization working on the relationship between culture and economics. I believe that for those ones like me working on this, on culture for development, there is not a more important occasion than the one we are having here today. I mean, out of any rhetoric, that there are not occasions with such a huge potential to impact on the future generation, thanks to the recovery of cultural heritage, than the one that we have with Syria. For all the reasons that we know, that you do know, certainly much better than me. So definitely, it's a privilege for me being here, for learning from you, especially from the open questions that were raised already. And thank you for having invited me to this floor. So is this one? Yes. Actually, when I was asked to join this conference, and I read its title, Restoring Syrian Heritage and Reviving Local Communities, I started wondering on what my real contribute could have been. I decided not to talk about the destruction. I don't want, and I can't really add anything significant to it. In addition, I feel I don't have any right to do it. I rather asked myself, what should we expect from the restoration of Syrian cultural heritage? This is a question I would like to pose to you all. We perfectly know that the operation of restoring Syrian heritage is going to take years, decades, a very long time. So what would we expect from the restoration of this cultural heritage? By reflecting on this, I tried to draft 10 points, 10 brief reflections, 10 concrete questions that would be my modest contribution to this workshop. The first one, let me start from this largely shared nowadays statement. Heritage counts. Monuments, historic cities, archaeological sites, they count. They count for their aesthetic, historic, documentary, symbolic values, we know. In the case of the world heritage sites, these values are so high to be defined unique, outstanding, universal. So heritage matters, but not just because of this, but also because it is a basic resource for what economists call material and non-material well-being. In other words, the quality of our life. It counts because it is a basic resource for equity among different generations. Cultural diversity is defined as necessary for humankind as biodiversity is for nature. For such reasons, heritage in its broadest definition and in all its forms, including the intangible dimension, is or can be a basic resource for development, a resource for impacting on the quality of life of people, of us. I need to say it. I want to say it loud. Peace. The Syrian conflict stands as one of the biggest ones in recent times. It has disrupted the social and economic life of Syrian people. Because of this, questioning the restoration of its cultural heritage today cannot be just a normal question and just a technical question. I, myself, cannot think and approach it just as a technical exercise, and I won't. Restoring Syrian heritage cannot be detached from the much larger process of healing the communities affected by all this. A process that must necessarily involve, better say engage, all the cultural community from all over the world. So first of all, we must ask ourselves as architects, archaeologists, economists, media professionals, whatever, decision maker, What do we want by making this restoration process start? And the reply to me is easy, is extremely easy. It's not naive, but real. We want peace, a long-lasting one, to heal the wounds, the divisions, the walls, especially the ones we have in our minds. We want peace for the people, for the Syrian people, to which all my respect goes. We want peace for us as well. My work is about cultural heritage. I'm an architect. I work all the time with economists, especially on exploring methods, strategies, models, instruments to manage cultural heritage in order to boost economic development. And this, despite, apart from being a technical exercise, it is something that we do for the people, not just for the heritage per se. A large part of my job is about transferring knowledge, teaching, if you prefer. And it is exactly while teaching that I was shown some picture about Syria, of old Damascus, of Palmyra, of Aleppo, and also the picture you see there, a less famous place, St. George's Church in Alameda, in the old Homs. When I saw it, I couldn't avoid to reflect on what heritage actually is. Look, is it the church, its remains? Is it the people gathering themselves, their relatives, their children, there for their ceremonies? What is heritage? Working for culture means, to me, working for the people, for us, and especially for our children. Restoring cultural heritage is nothing else than a promise of building a better future to our children. Let me provoke a little bit. Heritage is not about the past. It's not about the past. Let's think on that for a second. Yes, of course, cultural heritage is inherited from the past, but it is mainly for our future that we work on it. It is obviously about the future, what we are speaking about here today. And future is a right, must be, for all. The cultural heritage we are talking about today is of critical importance for the future of an entire country. The wealth of cultural heritage in Syria is in fact not only a testament to preserve, but it represents an enormous potential to support and restore the dignity of people and inspire the development of the country towards the future. The country needs this. It's clear. The world entire needs this. Once someone showed me a video on Instagram of a travel blogger traveling in Syria. This guy had traveled in more than 150 countries and said Syria, and Syrians as well, was possibly the most amazing place, but the most difficult to access. I have two daughters. You see them, Julie and Sophie. Listening that story, I thought I want my daughters, once they grow, able to come to Syria and to learn from its history, from its diversity, and get enriched from it. I want that cultural heritage to exist for them. Development, peace, people, future, it's because of all these characteristics that we can relate to heritage by calling it as a capital. In other words, investing in cultural heritage makes social and economic sense. The benefits of investing in cultural heritage for livability, job creation, entrepreneurship, poverty alleviation, local development have been increasingly and by the time largely debated and studied. And there is evidence that we must invest in it for its existence, for the benefits of present and especially the future generation. Cultural heritage is a capital. And this capital belongs to the collectivity. That's the rationale and it is something that we can measure, we have the instruments for measuring that, for justifying a collective effort for its upkeep, restoration, maintenance, and possibly good management. The restoration of cultural heritage, to me, is not the final goal, is never the final goal, but an essential requirement, a mean for development, a development based on values such as culture, identity, and, to quote Amartya Sen, the Nobel Prize, the expansion of human beings' capacity to develop the kind of life they value. Well, being aware of this, we, our foundation, started working 2 years ago, 2020, on a little program targeted on Syria, titled Heritage Beyond Walls. In our current society, the access to knowledge, to data, to information is more important than anything else for enabling capacities. Now, in the Syrian context, it's easy to see that the limited accessibility to knowledge caused by the conflict, the sanctions, the limitations, the isolation, is going to negatively impact, not just on the present, but also and especially on the future, weakening the local human capital capacity to be ready and to be prompt for the recovery. Heritage Beyond Walls program was born as a special project of our team, totally self-financed, aimed at improving accessibility to knowledge for Syrian university students on cultural heritage disciplines, through online lectures, through a repository of documents, a challenge to draft project ideas based on the current needs of heritage places and communities in Syria. Let me say, here you see some data. Let me say that this for us is not just a project, it is much more. It is something that we consider due to a land representing with its extraordinary heritage the history of humanity, and due especially to the people living in this land. So we started 2 years ago. We made until today 20 talks with 33 speakers from Syria, from outside, from 25 organizations and 9 different countries. I had the honor to speak with some of you as well, Zaki, Francesco Bandarin, Ali Ismail, just to mention the one that I see today here. 70 plus 60 participants had access to lectures, material, repositories, sharing with the speakers their views. And they were engaged in a little challenge, after which we awarded the first 4 best proposals. Not with the scope of making rankings, obviously, but of pushing young students, the professionals of tomorrow, to draft development projects based on their cultural heritage. We involved 10 international partners, and with many others, you can imagine, we shared information and, most important, ideas. I speak about Syria, the Syria case, whenever I have a good occasion for. We had occasion to present the work on Syria in many courses, on cultural property protection, on cultural projects for development, on cultural diplomacy, of including some contribution in our publications. We are planning initiatives with very important institutions in Italy. Hopefully, we could implement them very soon. We have set a little fund named IBLA for supporting students from emerging countries to access master programs. And today we have a Syrian student, a student from Homs, in one of our masters. The ideas, of course, are many others. But aside all this, looking the young students, the young professionals, talking each other, discussing with us their ideas, questioning, figuring that a different future is possible, feeling their hunger, this was the most rewarding result. And certainly this program is the one I'm most proud of, among the many others. Of course, I know it well, it's a drop in the ocean. even less. But any single drop could count a lot, depending by the pool where it falls. People benefits, community development, the building of relationships. It's there that we must make our drops fall, in the building and recovering of trust. It's all about that, about trust, in what economists refer to as human capital. It's through trust that we can think to multiply the effect of any single drop. Investing in the human capital is essential for making any single drop doing this. If we, a small organization, can do it, then let's imagine how much more powerful it would be if bigger organizations, even just the NGOs, take action. So it's time now to engage, to take action, to demonstrate tangible commitments and especially tangible results. And it's time now. Saving time means saving costs, including money. The reason of this workshop, as we learned from the morning, is to respond to the need for an unprecedented call to action towards some cultural heritage which belongs to the humanity as a whole. It is, allow me to say, an opportunity, a great one. The opportunity to develop a strategy for the country rescue through its cultural heritage, adopting a strategy which goes, in my view, much beyond restoration. A strategy for unveiling, thanks to restoration, the enormous potential for development, for attracting investment and addressing them, for attracting talented people, for making talented people keep in this place. A strategy that should move from addressing cultural heritage as a capital, in my view. A capital to restore and to use. Able to combine restoration with the production of new culture, of new cultural goods. The intangible cultural heritage, I know that the Syrian Trust has invested a lot in it, can play a crucial role in this sense and must be incorporated to me in this strategy. All the cultural resources, including assets, museums, roots, culture-based goods, local savoir-faire, traditions, institutions, whatever, must be part of it to reach the full potential of development and maximize its economic benefits. Let me ask you, is it about Syria that we are talking about today? Yes, for sure it is, finally. But is it just about Syria? I suspect no. Well, clearly not. The losses of Syrian cultural heritage are a loss not only for Syria, but also for the culture and civilization of the world. Together, and only together, we can recover them. Now, my work is designing and implementing projects for development based on culture. I would ideally think and propose you, decision maker, experts, directors of university, of sites, of big organizations, to reflect on the adoption of what we could call as an agenda for Syria, able to capitalize the uniqueness of this heritage and to address the next, as you were saying yesterday in our briefing, 10, 20, 30, 50 years. By investing, of course, in restoration, but also by balancing it with development. Better say, doing it for development. By promoting a blend of regulation and especially incentives. By filling the gaps in the capacities for young generation. They will be the protagonists of this, not us. By investing in creativity, in a context in which clear resources are not enough and will much probably never be enough. Investing in creativity, in the capacity of finding creative solutions to big questions is strategic. By ensuring a dialogue between private and public actors. and by measuring the results. Because an operation like this cannot waste any single resource, any single energy. Concluding, Damascus, Aleppo, Palmyra, Bosra, the ancient villages in the north, the Crack of Chevalier, and many, many other places, sites, much less famous, or if not yet unknown, are, we know, some of the oldest cities and sites and traditions in the world. These sites are repositories of an immense memory, which is our memory, destroyed or disrupted by the brutality of man. Today, they no longer say everything about their past, but they still contain it. Just as we know that under the rubble still, they also keep the history of their future. That cultural heritage is ours. That's why, while speaking, I often say we. And thank you for allowing me. We are responsible for it, for its destruction, now, for its restoration, for the recovery of the communities through it, especially for this. Otherwise, coming to my initial question, what's restoration for? Okay, I don't know if these reflections make a full sense, but I know that we don't want Aleppo, Palmyra, and all the Syrian cultural heritage to be invisible anymore. Thank you. Sure.
Alessio, sorry, my voice is very high on the. I really enjoyed your presentation, and in fact, I was honored also to be part of the Beyond the Walls project. All the points you mentioned, I think, are shared, I think, by everybody here. But I think I'm just trying to think, you know, with that you have now presented, which I think is fabulous, how could we, I mean, these are also kind of, you know, principles and even of UNESCO, when they talk about the peace in the minds of people or all these issues. My question is that we all believe in that, but there is reality at the same time. And I don't know, is it the role of the media that will help us? Or what do you think, how we could convey such important messages that you have delivered today to a larger, for people to share the same values, the same principles, the same, you know, great ideas that you have presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaki. Thank you for this comment. I said at the beginning I didn't feel to be technical in my presentation today, but I said there are instruments not to solve. I mean, instruments are never solutions, but to better address these questions. There are instruments to measure what we call existence value. Do we want, and when I say we, I mean all the people in the world, do we want this cultural heritage to exist in the future? How much are you willing to pay for it? This is something that in a strategy, since I mentioned the possible strategy, and I think it is something that all of us are thinking too, this could provide support to adopt a strategy. We can work on planning, on assessing every single step of the planning. Of course, we don't know what would happen in even tomorrow, but these are tools to, let's say, push the commitment, the real one. Again, it's a promise. It's a promise to our children, but it's a promise also to every funder, potential funder, that the money, the energy, the capacities would have an impact. And there are other tools. In our work, we normally work with local economic development planning. I briefly mentioned incentives. This to me would be strategic. In any economic process, incentives are the key. And I know that there are limitations which are not just the sanctions, but even other limitations, the barriers that we have in our mind. There are tools for doing this. Again, they would never be the solution without a full commitment, but they can help the commitment to come. Thank you.